I'm not going to worry about your level of concern.
Yoy and double yoy.
We talking about
Twitter.
Triple yoy.
Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
Quadruple yoy.
I mean, let's not get dramatic.
This is a product of your journey, and your journey's not over yet. Woo!
I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it.
We mock ourselves.
Welcome to What Chin's Talking About. The conversation about the Steelers' social media conversation. Exposing all your hot and toxic takes. And is there anything other than a hot and toxic take coming from Steelers Nation these days, this week, this day? Although, you know what? I'll give the haters I'll give them a bone. Because the Steelers team that I've watched my whole life, not whole life, 89 is probably when I was invested. I can still remember watching the Oilers playoff game. Was it New Year's Eve? I feel like I was at a bowling alley on New Year's Eve watching Gary Anderson kick that game-winning field goal against the Oilers. Was it New Year's Eve? It felt, in my story, it was New Year's Eve. And we were doing all-night bowling at Manor Lanes. And it was a primetime game that went down to the game-winning kick. But these days, well, I should say in those days, all the way up to, hell, maybe 2020, I felt the Steelers were a team that kept their own, that, didn't shake things up too much. But I look at this roster now, how many players are still on this roster from even just 2021? I mean, sure, Cam, TJ, Minka, Alex Highsmith, Pat Freiermuth, Chris Boswell, 6. Is that it? Out of 52, 10% of the roster is still around? That's not the Steelers I know. The Steelers I know would have brought back Najee, would have brought back Dante Jackson, would have brought back Larry Ogunjobi, would have brought back Russ, Justin Fields. The Steelers teams I know would have ran it back. Just look at the March Madness we did, where guys like Mike Tomczak and Jericho Cotchery and these guys spent 6 or more years in Pittsburgh as contributors. But now our starters don't even stick around. Or Pittsburgh lets them go. 30-some% starters gone from a season ago. It's a different era. For the good or for bad. I don't know. I can't say. We'll find out when the games are played. All right, let's get to some takes. I know you're like, where's Greg? Greg Benevent is on assignment. I think he's searching for a quarterback at the bottom of Cognac Lake. So fingers crossed. Let's get to some takes. Because the biggest question on the fans' minds is the same question that's been on their minds for 3 years. It's the question, who will be our QB? Hit the music. QB 22 plus few.
Where are you?
We've got some work to do now. QB 22 plus few. Who are you? We need some help from you now. You know we've got a mystery to solve. Which QB do we want, gold and black? But don't get sacked. And QBs do what they should do, then they will have themselves a yellow jacket. All right, maybe no yellow jackets yet for the 2025 Steeler quarterback. Is there one? Is there one? Yeah, well, of course there is. It's Mason Rudolph. All right, let's get to some of these takes. Starting with at Pittsburgh PG, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. The headline from Paul Zeiss. Steelers have seemingly fumbled the most important position on the field. How could they screw up quarterback? We had Russ and Justin Fields. We didn't keep either of them. We may lose out on Aaron Rodgers. We lost out on Sam Darnold. We lost out on... I mean, you name it. Have other quarterbacks signed? I don't know. Kenny Pickett. We missed out on Kenny Pickett 2.0. Well, what Paul Zeiss doesn't seem to do is get any kind of inside info. I thought you were the insider, Paul. Get some info on why that the quarterback position hasn't been signed yet. I'm sure someone will talk because it seems like sources be talking. Have seemingly fumbled the most important position on the field. Just remember, Steelers fans, Steelers won playoff games with Mark Malone, Bubby Brister, Mike Tomczak, Tommy Maddox, of course. Who else has won playoff games? And Big Ben Roethlisberger. You don't need Bradshaw or Ben to win playoff games in the NFL. You can. I know people are like, well, Tomczak was 25 years ago. Well, hey, I was just watching the Tomczak win against. You said you were watching. Who were they playing? Shoot, I was just watching it. Well, I can tell you, it was Tomczak as quarterback. And Slash was still in there. Slash played some downs under center. It reminded me kind of Russ and Fields. You know, is Russ our Mike Tomczak? Is Fields our Cordell? Well, I watched that game, and hey, Tommy Gunn had some throws. You know, they didn't need it. They didn't need it in the second half because it was Bosch, and Lester. But I'm not willing to say here in March that Steelers have fumbled quarterback position. Obviously, if they wanted Justin Fields more than they did, they would have made him an offer he couldn't refuse. You know, what's the word? 2 years. Steelers offered him, $20 million, and Jets offered him $40 with $30 guaranteed. You know, and on one hand, you're like, why would he take that deal? Doesn't he want to stay in Pittsburgh? Why would he want to play for the Jets? And then I'm thinking, man, for $10 million, you know, and Justin Fields, let's be honest, let's be frank. If he could have earned a mega, a 9-digit deal, he would have proved it on the field, and that wasn't the case. So to come away with $30 million guaranteed out of New York, yeah, maybe it's worth leaving Pittsburgh for $30 million. I don't know. I've never seen $300,000. So, let alone $3 million or $30 million. I might do some things that maybe are against my interests as a quarterback, as a winner, compared to my interests as a human who wants to have wealth for their kids and their kids' kids. So I'm not going to say that was a fumble. I'm not going to say it was a fumble. Let's move on. At Stats Guy Daniel Valente. The fact the Steelers said they hope to have at least one of their 2024 QBs re-signed before free agency and don't is a pretty big swing and a miss to me. No safety net. Gotta wonder if that'll affect offensive free agents. Well, didn't affect Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller came no matter who the quarterback was. And DK was traded. I thought for sure when the DK trade happened that meant that Russ had a hand in it, but I guess DK was playing the Justin Fields move. It doesn't matter what else is going on. I'm just going to get the bag. But it is something, Art said he would like one of them, but I'm wondering if Art really had the inside track on that. Did the Steelers really want Fields or Russ? It seems like, man, they weren't in love so much. They'd rather have Mason on $8 million before deciding on Russ yet. So, okay. Is it a swing and a miss? I don't know. I want to hear what Tomlin or Khan has to say maybe at the end of this, what the strategies were. I'm sure they might not say anything, but I think it was Art who was saying, yeah, we'll take one or the other. Maybe because you don't want to say the owner shouldn't stay up at the press conference. Yeah, we're going to look in a different direction for a quarterback. It's just not what maybe you want to hear from the owner's mouth. And I'm not just saying Russ, but maybe any potential free agent or player. It's like you don't want that Jerry Jones type of owner, where he's kind of I don't know. I'm just saying maybe Art wasn't in on these quarterback conversations because Art said, yeah, we'll take one or the other, but maybe Tomlin was like, not so much. If they couldn't get Fields, if Fields was the first choice, it seems like they offered him the contract and they couldn't get it done, but the Steelers didn't really move mountains to make it happen. Makes me think, they were at it for a cheaper deal, but they weren't willing to break the bank. Let's see. Can we do any more? Oh, here's a hot take from at Akibi Bwala, a Kink Habwala, a DD Kinkabwala. The Steelers' at best confusion or at worst mismanagement of the QB situation goes back to before the close of Ben Roethlisberger's tenure. Don't you all remember how Pitt strung him along because there was no succession plan and it ultimately took taking a $5 million pay cut to bail the organization out? Well, that is some revisionist history. Wow. The Steelers never strung Ben along. If anything, you could say it was vice versa. Wasn't Ben flirting with, this might be one more year left, or this might be it. He has, I haven't made a decision yet. And I believe that it was talk like that led the Steelers to draft Mason Rudolph in the first place in the third round. And then we all know the warm welcome Ben gave him. So how did Pittsburgh string Ben out on that? If, there was no succession plan in place. Yeah, the succession plan was Mason Rudolph, a third-round pick who they had a first-round grade on. They traded up to get him. That was a succession plan. And you could say, looking here in March of 2025, that maybe that's how it worked out anyway. Mason Rudolph on the roster. That was a succession plan. It ultimately took Ben taking a $5 million pay cut to bail the organization. No, Pittsburgh asked him, made him take that pay cut. At David M. Todd. David Todd. Justin Fields, a 26-year-old quarterback with 44 career starts who's 14-30, hasn't been close to the top half of starting NFL quarterbacks in his 4-year career, somehow has Steelers fans concerned that they're missing out on prime Steve McNair. Crazy. I think this might be a winning take for me. Fields hasn't been that guy. If he was that guy, Russ would have never went in week 7, game 7. If Fields was that man after 6 games, if Fields was Steve McNair, if Fields was Vic, if Fields was Cordell, I don't know. Can you compare Fields and Cordell? I don't know. Cordell threw some picks. If he was that guy, there'd be no doubt. But Fields wasn't that guy. We all saw it. Russ came in, played better for those next 7 games. 6 games. Then the then the losing streak, of course, to kill the season. But would that have been any different with Justin Fields have won one more game that Russ couldn't have won? Looking back, I don't know. I don't think so. Fields isn't the guy. He's not that guy. Fields is probably going to play this year in New York. And then don't be surprised if he's relegated to the bench next year despite $10 million, or maybe replaced. It's the Jets. You think Fields is going to turn the Jets around all of a sudden into a playoff contender? Fields wasn't the guy. At Faribaugh FB, Nick Faribaugh. I'm sure I'll get many dissenters on this one, but if I were the Steelers, I would have been all over Geno for a third. You know, I would have loved to have the West Virginia kid as our quarterback. But I mean, he's not any younger than any of these other big vets, and I didn't see Geno putting up so much. Seattle wouldn't have got rid of him for a third if there was a bigger future there. I don't know. I would have taken, at this point, now sitting here on, without a Russ or Fields or Aaron Rodgers, I might take Geno at this point. But in the moment when it happened, I don't think Geno is the guy. I'd take Russ over Geno. At 5-star matchup, look, I hate the guy, but put everything else aside, and Rodgers is the best football option for this year. Man, I don't know how I feel about Aaron Rodgers, man. I don't want him. I don't want it. Is he the best option? Man, maybe he is. Maybe he is. But I don't want the baggage. Remember when the Steelers avoided all this kind of baggage? Remember when all the haters on Ben for doing a radio show and, talking about how he threw players under the bus and didn't take responsibility? You think Aaron Rodgers is going to be 10 times that? I don't want Rodgers. I don't want the Pat McAfee. I don't want all the distractions. We did Hard Knocks, and that wasn't, that was kind of lackluster for me. So I don't want Aaron every Tuesday on Pat McAfee or in the press conference, undercutting Tomlin or the coordinators or other players. I just don't. I don't like what we've seen from Rodgers. I don't want it. Is he the best option right now? Maybe. Can we get through a season like this? And if everyone's like, oh, I can't believe you're criticizing a player for his viewpoints or whatever. And it's like that. It's not, look, Mase is Maga. I don't care, Pouncy, Ben. But Aaron Rodgers, he's like InfoWar. I'd take Mega Mase over InfoWar Aaron. I just don't want that. I don't know. But it still might be the best option. That's the thing. Can I root for I've never been in a situation. Can I root for a guy I don't like? I don't know. I guess that was the Ben situation, when his legal trouble. But back then, I defended. I was like, oh, these are, this is this and this is. I found ways to defend it. And now in hindsight, maybe I was, I don't know. Who knows? I don't want to talk about Ben. Let's move on. There's more QB. Let's talk about Russ. At Steelers man JJ, Jeff Johnson, Russell Wilson went to the playoffs with one good receiver, a slow running back, an overrated tight end, and traffic cone blocking. I don't get the hate. This is me too, kind of. We win one more game. We beat the Ravens and win the division. Man, it's a whole different story. If it wasn't just the biggest collapse in franchise history for a Steelers playoff team, then I think it would be a different narrative. But I think Russ is the better quarterback. I think he's better accuracy. People say, oh, Justin can, throw the big ball. Yeah, he has the arm, but he doesn't have the touch. You know, I think about that outstretched pass to Cameron Hayward last season. Perfect. It would have been a touchdown off his fingers. Just a little bit like that. You know, he's just, you know, Fields might just be a step less accurate than Russ. I'll take Russ. And if the line improves, wasn't that the biggest problem? Not enough protection? I watched every other NFL team. Feels like these quarterbacks had, you know, all the time in the world. They had they were playing Layla, you know, in the time that it took to get the ball to really get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. And Russ just didn't have that. You know, and people were like, "Oh, Russ doesn't have the footwork." Isn't it the O-line? If the O-line is solid, wouldn't that be something? You know, really, with just George Pickens and, you know, a who's who of receivers. Wouldn't now with DK, GP, Freiermuth? I don't know. Jeff Johnson thinks Freiermuth's overrated, but wouldn't, you know, we don't know yet. We haven't seen the full assortment of weapons since, I don't know. Was it Ben's last year? Let's go to at Mic'd Up Sports 1, Mike Nicastro. Toward the end of last year, I was told that Russell Wilson has dead arm. Wasn't throwing much in practice and turned into a serious issue that the team basically ignored by starting him. Okay, all right, Mike Nicastro. If this was such the case, where were these stories at the end of last year? You know, he said, a player told him. Well, I mean, if a player tells you something like that, the due diligence of a true journalist would be to maybe get a second source and then report that. We didn't hear any reports about dead arm. No Dulac, no Kabali, no Chris Carter, certainly no Mike Nicastro, but he got the word from a player that Russ had dead arm. Now, if that's the case, then I understand why there's no effort to re-sign him. I always hope that's the case, because otherwise it perplexes me. Because I think Russ is a slam dunk choice. Does he have dead arm? Okay. You know, Andrew Siciliano told me in 2020 that Ben had a noodle arm. Well, he still led him to the playoffs in his final season. Again, maybe if the O-line, you know, we were starting rookie Dan Moore Jr. and Kendrick Green, rookies starting all season, maybe, and Kevin Dotson as a second-year player. Maybe if the line was, then again, I'm thinking next year, well, it's going to be Troy Falatanu second year. The line's still young. I don't know much, but I do know that if the O-line improves, then your quarterback will improve. All right, let's get to what does Steeler Nation want? At Blitz_Blitzberg. Hoodians wants it at QB. Rodgers, 61.6%. Russ, 38.4%. Not quite 2-1, but that's a big margin. People want Rodgers over Russ? You know, I saw the breakdown, and in most categories, you know, last year, Russ beat Rodgers in a lot of categories. Oh, you're like, Kyle, what categories? You know, you're talking about reporters not following up. I'll tell you what categories, he said with a grin. Russ was better than Rodgers on the following. Pass rating. Russ, 95.6. Rodgers, 90.5. Yards per attempt. Russ, 7.4. Rodgers, 6.7. That's not, I'm not going to, you know, that's not that. That's 0.7 yards. I'm not going to cry too much about that. QBR. Now, this isn't the rating that I know. QBR, Russ, 51.3. Rodgers, 48. Touchdowns to interception ratio. Russ, 3.2. Rodgers, 2.5. Now, this concerns me. You know, we're going to bring Rodgers. Rodgers is throwing just as many picks out there as anyone else. Pass yards per game, Rodgers had 229, Russ 225. So, you know, they're I guess they're not too dissimilar. But with Rodgers, you get a head case. With Russ, you get, you know, people say it's corny, man, but I'll take a man of God over a man of, what is Rodgers? I don't even know. Man doesn't get along with his family. Dates celebrities, doesn't stick with them. I know, I'm not judge. I can't judge. Who am I to judge? Well, at least someone is keeping a level head about this. At Chris Boswell 9 on IG. I got this. GP and DK down there somewhere. I'll run it with Mase. I'll run it with, hey, Boswell. I'll run with Boswell. I won't run with Boswell. Let's move on. Enough quarterback talk. Gosh, there's other stuff going on. Like at Pittsburgh Sport, Steelers takeaways. Metcalf and Pickens in Austin. This is a top 5 receiving core in the NFL. Wow. Oh, okay, let's slow down. Yeah, DK is great. Pickens, we know what we got. You throwing Calvin Austin into that as a top 5 receiving core? Okay, I don't know. You're going to compare this with, Minnesota's, Cincinnati's. Who are the top 5? Okay, Minnesota, Cincinnati. Those got to be at least 2 of the top 5 receiving cores. After that, I don't know. Do I need to? I don't know enough about these other teams. Let's hold our horses on top 5 receiving core. Let's just try to. How about just receiving core? We've got a receiving core now. How about that? I think that's the better upgrade. Maybe you could say last year, maybe we didn't have a receiving core. We had receivers. I don't know if we had a core. Moving on. At JRound32, Josh Roundtree. The only way you keep Pickens around on a lame duck contract and take the risk with his attitude is if you think you can contend for a Super Bowl or even for the AFC, and you absolutely need him to be part of that. That's just not realistic right now. Wrong. Of course, the so-called fan people are doubters. No, they are in for right now. Every year, it might be a cliche. Every year we're in for the Super Bowl. This year included. With Cam, probably last year with Cam, maybe. TJ, who knows how much longer. They're playing for now. They're playing to win now. Keep Pickens on a lame duck contract? Yeah, because you got the top 5 receiving core. Why would you want to break that up? That said, hey, who knows what Pickens' future is? But I'd let him ride out the contract and see what happens. He has a great year. Maybe you want to tag him. Maybe you want to tag and trade. Or maybe you still want to extend. Who knows? Who knows how it all plays out? This year could change. Winning changes everything. Winning.
I've trained myself to hate it.
What are we going to do, Steeler Nation? What are we going to do? Well, what would you do? Let's ask what Steeler Nation would do about Pickens. At David M. Todd. David Todd. Keep Pickens, 62%. Trade Pickens, 38%. I'm keeping him. Keep him this season. We need 2 receivers. That's what we missed without Deontay Johnson. And even though I think that trade was a win, even though the Steelers didn't keep Dante Jackson, you need 2. You need 2. You need 3. Well, Freiermuth is the 3rd. You need 4. Scotty Miller. You need 5. No, who's that receiver? You just picked up a running back who can catch balls too. Okay. Well, there's more. Let's talk about some signings we actually did make. At Heisenberg H. Heisenberg. This is not what I wanted at all. Why are we addicted to signing washed corners? Darius Slay. That's going to be a cool jersey. Slay. Washed corner? I know. 34, right? Spent $10 million. But didn't we spend $10 million a year on Joe Hayden? He wasn't washed. But how long ago was that? How long ago was Hayden? Was it a decade ago? $10 million a year? So really, we're getting Darius Slay, you might say, on a deal. Or at least compared to inflation, $10 million for Joe Hayden, you think it might be a little bit more for a Darius Slay. Is he washed? I don't know. Obviously the Steelers think this is an improvement over Dante Jackson. So I'm here with it. Give me a Slay. I'll slay. Slay on Slay. washed corner. I mean, what? Any more washed than the carousel of free agents that we've had over the past decade or past 5 years, from Akilo Witherspoon to Levi Wallace to Patrick Peterson to Dante Jackson. Back in the day, the Steelers would have kept one and stuck with it. Not anymore. New blood every year in, year out. Will someone stick? Well, Slay obviously can't stick for too long. Did we sign anyone else? At the return of David M. Todd. David Todd. The end of the Tyler Matakevich and Mark Robinson eras? No, Elandon Roberts. The Athletic ranked 150 guys, and Harrison didn't make the list for what it's worth. I know. I wanted Elandon Roberts back, too. I thought, yeah, this guy's a thumper. Steelers for life. Let's do it. Cheap contract. I mean, the dude just didn't play enough snaps. You got Patrick Queen. You got Wilson. Those guys are going to get the snaps. Roberts, got like 15 snaps in a game maybe last season? Is Harrison, a proper replacement? Well, I mean, certainly on special teams, we'll see that. Inside linebacker? I don't know. Maybe Cole. Maybe Cole Holcomb. Still playable, But funny that Steeler Nation would hate on a guy whose jersey reads Harrison. Maybe I need a Harrison jersey collection. Just start all the Steeler Harrisons. Mark Robinson, we wish you well. We always knew it would be an experiment. It didn't work out, but what a story. Tyler Matakevich, also good on special teams. I love special teamers. But, it's age comes for all of us. Oh, wait, it's time. Let's, someone who's can't escape the blame, of course. It's con season, and Omar Khan, con artist, at Fook Mazzy, Fly God. So does letting Fields walk count as a low-key L for Omar Khan? This is a good question. I wouldn't mind someone asking Khan that. Because you regret missing out on Fields. Because this is the guy who's the master of contracts, right? So if he thought the best move was the lower contract that the Steelers offer Fields, then there's got to be a reason for that. And the fact that Fields didn't, I don't know, did they come back and say, I think that Fields just went to Jets and they said, hey, you can sign this now or not. And he probably did, $30 million guaranteed. But I'm curious if Khan, if has regret for this. I wonder if someone would ask him and if he would respond sincerely. If someone would just say, do you regret missing out on Justin Fields? Is it an L? I don't know. It's not. Is it as big as an L as missing out on Rod Woodson? No. Is it as big as L as... What's the other big L? Any other big L's? That's probably the biggest L, right? Steelers history, not renewing Woodson's contract. It's not that big of an L. I'll give him a little L. At neutral NFL Pit. For the ones who say that Omar Khan deserves a grade no lower than a B, is really trending towards fraudulent status. He ain't no different than Kevin Colbert. Is that supposed to be an insult now? Khan ain't no Kevin Colbert? And I've seen a lot of people still blasting these first-round picks from 2018 to 2024 or whatever. It's like Terrell Edmonds. That dude played many, many games. Yeah, he wasn't Steelers for life. Turned out to be. Devin Bush. Yeah, that's probably the biggest that's probably the biggest front office bust in that's got to, if we do a 1 seed on March Madness Steelers worst front office moves, In hindsight, it's going to be trading up for Bush because they traded up the barn. Bush was supposed to be Polamalu and more. Can you put that on Khan? No. In the moment, Devin Bush was a slam dunk. Michigan, captain, pedigree, heritage. That's why the Steelers traded up and bet the barn for him. He was the slam dunk. He got injured. He was small. But I'm not putting fraudulent status on Kevin Colbert or Omar Khan at this point. Kenny Pickett was a bust. That would seem to be above the neck problem. It was the most researched draft pick, Colbert said, of his career. So, fraudulent? I wouldn't say that. You can't hit every time. Steelers probably have hit more than often. It's probably why Steelers in the past were Steelers for life. Haven't had one of those spirits here since 1969. Well, Cam will be Steelers for life. Hopefully TJ. Let's move on. More Khan season. Oh, we're back to at Heisenberg. Everyone's saying goodbye to Najee like he's a generational running back. He's not. He was mediocre at best and occasionally stiff-armed a guy. A waste of a first-round pick. Wipe your tears away and let's focus on something that isn't measured by averaging 59 yards a game. Again, the revisionist history. Let's remember why Najee was the first-round pick. First off, Art said we want to run the ball. And Najee had all the things the Steelers look for. Captain, leader, off the field. Remember, Najee was a big activist for homeless issues. I don't know where that's gone in the years since he went pro, but no, Najee wasn't a Frank Gore or Barry Sanders or Barry Foster or Bam Morris. But he started every season, played hard, didn't get the contract. Enough said. What are we complaining about? Oh, that fans are sad that he left? Man, I bought the Najee hat. That was the first time I bought a player's personal merch. I bought the Najee hat when he got drafted. NJ. Or I'm sorry, NH. NJ. Didn't work out. At Baddest Bear Jew, Jared Kane. I am loving the accumulation of compensatory picks. I do believe in Omar Khan's vision to utilize these to secure our QB of the future. Stay patient and trust the process. Wow, that's some high hopes, Steeler Nation. Loving the accumulation of future draft picks. See, this is where Steeler Nation is. Because, every draft pick is a potential yellow jacket, the way Steelers Nations act. Every draft is the best draft class. Better than 74 last year. Best draft class since 74. I don't want to accumulate compensatory picks. How many times in Steelers history have they, have one of these picks worked out? Fewer than you think. If you go back to the March Madness episode. Sure. Yeah, we got we traded and got Joey Porter's pick. Actually, that was I don't know if that's exact fits the case here, but compensatory picks don't play on the field. Compensatory picks don't throw the ball, don't run the ball. Compensatory picks are potential. Don't do anything. I don't want a third, a fourth, a sixth, and a seventh, and hopefully I'm going to trade up for a first. Steelers Nation loves draft season more than actual football season, I think. Compensatory picks. Sure, I'm glad. Hey, if that's the plan, which I don't think it is. Tomlin, Steelers win for now. I can't believe Omar Khan would be like, well, what we're going to do is We're just going to try to see how many compensatory picks we can stockpile for next year. And, then we'll just kind of see how things go this year. On Cam's last season, on TJ Watt's, maybe last in his prime, or maybe you're already past the prime, maybe. Nah, don't think so. Compensatory picks. That's not a football stat. Okay. It's not a reasonable.
That is a reasonable expectation.
Not a reasonable expectation that compensatory picks are going to lead to a Super Bowl. But maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong on that. I would love to come back a year from now or 2 years from, I guess it would be 5 or 6 years when we actually play, and say, man, that compensatory pick, we'll do a new March Madness bracket of French office moves, and that'll be, by the way, for those keeping track of the March Madness brackets, the Sweet 16 kicks off on Monday, behindthesteelcurtain.com to vote. Not too many surprises, although maybe acquiring Bryant McFadden and a 6th-round pick that would later become Antonio Brown. That's been the Cinderella story. That's probably your Cinderella pick of these brackets. I'm still voting for the 1 seeds: Buss, Ferrier, Kevin Green, trading up for Palomalu pick. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com on Monday for the Sweet 16. One more thing on con season. At David M. Todd, David Todd. Steelers don't want at least 33% of their starters from the 2024 season back. Yeah, like I said at the top, 33% of the team from a year ago, and 90% of the team from 4 years ago? I don't want to say worried, but that's a different Steelers team for me. I would love to hear some insight from Con or Tomlin, just what their thinking is. That's how instead of getting mad on social media, I'm like, all right, let me try to put myself in their shoes and try to figure out how they're coming to these decisions. And of course, it involves information that we are not privy to. Let's talk defense. Well, we've talked some defense, but let's talk TJ. At Kevin Adams 26, Kevin Adams of the terrible tailgates, and my number one turn in your towel suspect, Kevin Adams. The Steelers dragging their feet on TJ's new deal is now going to likely cost them more than it would if they would have gotten it done earlier. But this is how they do business, stubbornly slow. Man, people are so mad that Myles Garrett took this $40 million contract. Max Crosby's taking the contract. Micah Parsons probably going to take a contract. Now, what are we going to do about TJ Watt? I'll tell you what, you're going to pay him. You're going to pay him. Is it $40 million? Fine. If you've been listening to me, you know what I think. Well, maybe up until the last 5 games of this season, TJ Watt has been on pace to be the greatest Steelers defender in franchise history, statistically at least. Are you going to, you're going to give up on that because, I want to pay him $35 million instead of $40 million? Nope. You're going to pay TJ. Oh, why didn't they get the job done earlier? Didn't they know all these you don't think everyone knows what the situation is? You think Con doesn't know what the situation is? You think TJ's agent doesn't know what the situation is? This is the non-story. You're going to pay TJ, and you're going to do it quietly and happily. And it's not a negative to pay the best defender statistically in Steelers franchise history. At Mike Asti 11, Mike J. Asti. Honestly, the Steelers should blow it all up, trade Watt and Hayward, and whoever can get them value, do a complete rebuild, and take the hit of a legit losing season. No QB available is going to make the Steelers a Super Bowl threat. They obviously won't do this, though. Haven't the Steelers already blown it up? 33% of their roster from a year ago? 90% of their roster from 4 years ago? Everyone but Cam, TJ, Highsmith, Freiermuth, Boswell. That's it. They've done the complete rebuild. And we were already doing the rebuild in 2021. Rookie running back, rookie tight end, rookie left tackle, rookie center, rookie safety, Trey Norwood. All got significant snaps 2021. That was the rebuild, and obviously didn't take because rebuilding again. Oh, my goodness. I need Greg back for this, man. All right, let's try to get the band on the field. Or not. Why? Nothing ever has to work, right? I'm a one-man shop here. Just want the... Man, sometimes I just wish I had a producer do this for me. Or help me. Okay, let's get the band on the field. All right. Okay, all right. Some odds and ends, including at WPXI. TJ Watt and wife Danny announced birth of their first child. Congrats, TJ's a daddy. All the more reason he's going to want that contract, How quick things, probably a year ago, he wasn't thinking. Now all of a sudden he's probably thinking college fund and preschool and yada, yada. Well, yeah. He's a millionaire, sure, but hey, things still cost money. Blakely Marie Watt. I mean, is that like named after the Gossip Girl actress? I don't love it. Opportunity here could have named her Rooney. TJ could have been Rooney Marie Watt. How about that? That would have got you a $40 million contract. Or why not a J? Why you got JJ and TJ? Why not I don't know. Why not Blakely J? Well, no, you don't want BJ Watt. Well, congratulations to the Watt family, and may Blakely become a perfect Steeler fan. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Let's move on. At 93.7, the fan, 93.7, the so-called fan. Former Steeler David DeCastro is in the weed game, and his dispensary is planned to open at the former G&G Fitness on McKnight Road. David DeCastro, yeah, for pain, it turns out that cannabis might be better than opioids. I think that's why DeCastro is getting into the weed game. Uniquely enough, Roethlisberger and Bud Dupree are also investors. So I haven't heard Ben. I don't know how Ben squares his cannabis investments with his prayer circle back there in Sewickley or whatever. Where does he live? I don't know. But I'd love to get DeCastro on to kind of just talk about getting into the weed game. Martavis Bryant, basically lost his career over it. That guy could have been a monster. Maybe. Who knows? We don't know. But it certainly seemed like it for a moment. Now DeCastro's an investor. Poor Bryant. Redeem Martavius. All right, last thing. At JHT Money, Jordan Thompson. Not hearing Craig Wolfley on the air this year is going to be an adjustment. Him and Tunch as a duo were pillars of my fandom. Here's to a heavenly reunion. Yeah. Man, Wolf, I was just, I just heard him on the Wexel's podcast. Man, must have been just like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And everything seemed just great. And then, when he was young, he was younger than the Dynasty Steelers. And it just makes me, I'm getting to the age. I'm not super old by any means, or maybe I am. I guess if you're a young fan, I am in the super old age. But, I'm seeing with my parents where, it's like death becomes a part of your life. When you're seeing your friends pass, or you're reading about the obits every day. And I see that with my parents, reading the obits to see if they know anyone. And, that becomes the conversation of your life is, who's passed. And I'm just starting to see that in my own life. I've experienced loss, but I was probably immature in, maybe my grieving or maybe my understanding. But, to see Wolf gone at 66, and in the next couple years, we're going to be losing all of these dynasty Steelers and pop culture figures from the rock and roll golden age of rock and Steelers dynasty. We're going to start losing these. So just appreciate the people you have. This is hard for me. I'm the last one to appreciate anything, but it's no joke. It's no joke, life, and too soon for Wolf, and it's and pretty soon it's gonna be all of them. And I don't mean to bum you guys out, but it's just a different perspective, I guess, as you get older, and one that isn't easy to. All the wisdom in the world doesn't make it any easier. All right. That's what we've been talking about. Right, Coach?
That's what we've been talking about.
I could really use your help with iTunes reviews. That really helps the algorithm. I know we don't post enough. This is not DK getting 10,000 views a day. Maybe we're getting 100 views a week or 150. But, hey, you can help. Write a review on iTunes. That helps the algorithm. Tell a Steelers fan. I tell my friends, they could care less. You got a Steelers podcast? Well, you must be a loser. So anything you can help to spread the word, I always appreciate it. You can follow me on the social media at Kyle Kreis. Greg is at Greg Benevent on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter too, but and Blue Sky and all that. I'm trying to, I want to be more regular on TikTok. I'm more of a watcher really than a poster, but I gotta work on that because I gotta get these hot highlights. These these podcast highlights, which get all about 100 views. I appreciate all of you though. And this is weird territory for me, this Steelers offseason. It feels like things are new and unexpected. And I don't know exactly how comfortable I am with it. So I could use your help in joining me for this ride this offseason and coming season. Completely reformed roster. Maybe Aaron Rodgers. Complete media circus in the works. So it's going to be an interesting journey. We can take it together, or we can just meet you. I'll just meet you at the appetapata. All right, until next week, keep listening to your coach.
Be their best selves. That's going to be required.
Stay in school.